Welcome to The Explainer. It feels like the ground is shaking under the world of big tech right now. All the familiar rules, they're being torn up and rewritten in real time. We're talking about Apple, a company that's suddenly waking up from a decade-long nap, a huge geopolitical wall going up between Samsung and a key rival, and you won't believe this, the US government inventing a strange new tax for its own companies. So let's frame this whole thing around one central question. What actually happens when a tech giant, especially one as famously careful and, let's be honest, predictable as Apple, suddenly stops playing it safe? Well, the answer seems to be shaking up the entire industry. So here's how we're going to break this all down. First up, we'll look at what's going on with Apple's sudden product avalanche. Then we're going to zoom out to this massive legal fight that's creating what I'm calling a display wall in the global supply chain. After that, we'll get into a totally bizarre new rule in the chip wars. And finally, we'll do a quick rapid-fire look at the general chaos that's erupting all over the place. Okay, let's kick things off with Apple. For the better part of a decade, you could say they've been, well, pretty complacent. But something has definitely changed. It feels like the sleeping giant is finally awake and it's planning an absolute avalanche of new stuff. And what's really wild here is just the sheer ambition and the sheer volume of it all. We're not just talking about little updates here and there. According to a huge report from Bloomberg, Apple is working on some seriously futuristic stuff. A tabletop robot with a way smarter Siri? Yep. Home security cameras that are the eyes of your whole smart home? That too. And then you look further down this list, smart glasses, a foldable phone, even a giant foldable that could be a MacBook and an iPad. It's like they've turned on a fire hose of new ideas. So the big question is, why now? I mean, for the last 10 years, we had the Apple on the left, right? The complacent Apple, just rehashed products relying on trapping everyone in its ecosystem and that App Store monopoly. But this new Apple on the right, it's a totally different animal. It's being forced to react to this perfect storm of pressure from governments all over the world and, maybe even more importantly, the AI hype train that threatens its whole business model. The ground is shifting, and now Apple has no choice but to start trying radical new things again. Okay, so let's move from one company's strategy to a full-blown global conflict. This is a story about how something that started as a pretty standard corporate lawsuit over stolen tech has ballooned into a geopolitical wall being built right through the middle of the global tech supply chain. Just look at this number, 14 years and 8 months. Let that sink in for a second. That is the length of an import ban that the U.S. International Trade Commission just slapped on the Chinese display giant BOE. That is not a slap on the wrist, my friends. That is a clear attempt to completely lock a major global player out of the entire U.S. market for nearly a decade and a half. So here are the main players in this drama. You've got Samsung Display, who started this whole thing by accusing BOE of stealing their crown jewel OLED secrets. Then you have BOE, which is China's #1 display maker, and then there's pretty much every device maker you can think of, including Apple, who is reportedly planning to use BOE displays in the upcoming iPhone 17. The ruling is simple. If you want to sell your phone, your tablet, your whatever, in the United States, you simply cannot use BOE parts. You have to drop them. Period. And here's the moment the conflict really escalated. A U.S. congressional commission framed this whole thing not as a simple patent dispute, but as a matter of national security. When you start hearing language like that, you know it's not just about two companies fighting anymore. This is now about international politics and a full-blown trade war. All right, on to our third piece of evidence that we are in a totally new era. And I've got to say, this one is just weird. We're moving from display panels to the brains of the whole operation, AI chips, and a bizarre new deal that is literally rewriting the rules of how countries do business. Here's the core fact, first reported by the Financial Times. To get licenses to sell certain AI chips to China, American giants NVIDIA and AMD have apparently agreed to pay their own government 15% of the money they make from those sales. Just think about that for a second. An American company paying the American government for the right to sell something to another country. This deal is so strange, it doesn't even really have an official name. But you can kind of think of it as a reverse tariff or maybe an export tax.
Normally, right, a country taxes imports coming in. But here, the US government is effectively taking a cut from its own companies just for the privilege of selling out. It's a brand new, kind of bizarre way to control trade.
And hey, don't just take my word for how strange this all is. An expert quoted in the Financial Times put it as plainly as possible. This has never happened before. It is a completely unprecedented move, and it really signals just how unpredictable and, frankly, made up on the fly the rules have become in this high-stakes battle over AI. So we've seen a giant wake-up, we've seen a supply chain wall get built, and we've seen some truly bizarre new trade rules. For this last section, let's just do a quick rapid-fire round of a few other stories that show just how much the entire tech industry is in a state of flux right now. It really is a glimpse of chaos. First up, you have this perfect little drama. Elon Musk gets into a Twitter spot, his users get his own AI chatbot, Grok, to fact-check him, and the chatbot actually sides with his rival, OpenAI. And what happens next? Grok is mysteriously taken offline. It's the creator literally losing control of his creation in the most public way imaginable. Next, check out the sheer audacity of this. A startup called Perplexity makes this huge, public, $34.5 billion offer to buy Google Chrome. Now, whether it's a serious bid or just a publicity stunt, it doesn't even matter. It's a huge sign that the old guard, the giants, are being challenged in ways that were just unthinkable a few years ago. Then you've got these massive, sudden pivots that give you whiplash. After years of hyping it up, Tesla reportedly just disbands its entire Dojo supercomputer team. Now, this isn't some minor tweak. It's a major, sudden upheaval in the AI strategy of one of the most watched companies in the world. And it just adds to this feeling of instability. And finally, just on the quirkier side of all this chaos, you have the design firm Teenage Engineering. They release a computer case for literally $0. You just pay shipping. And what happens? It sells out instantly. It's part marketing, part art project, and 100% a sign of a market where the old rules of what things cost and what has value just don't really seem to apply anymore. So when you put it all together, from Apple's reactive product avalanche to these new geopolitical walls in our supply chains to bizarre reverse tariffs on ships, it's just so clear that we are in a completely new era of tech. The old playbooks are being tossed out the window, and it all leads us to one final big question. In this new era of tech chaos, who's going to be the next to fall, and who is poised to rise?